My work is about being a Japanese Canadian. As with most Japanese Canadians of my generation, the trauma of the uprooting and internment that was forced on us by the Canadian government in 1942 plays a lasting and haunting role in our identity and is firmly ingrained in our ethnic psyche. The feelings of shame and humiliation that we felt and being labeled enemy aliens were so deep-seated that for many years, well into my adulthood, I was in some sort of denial about my Japanese heritage. Eventually, I decided to do something about it, and I turned to my art as a way of coming to terms with who I am and also to find some equilibrium in my dual identity, that is, Japanese and Canadian. I began my art career as an abstract painter. After many years of experimenting and searching for a personal style, I developed an approach which I felt was distinctive and held a lot of promise for further exploration. The abstract work went well for some time until I began to feel that the pictures were coming together too easily and that I had fallen into a comfortable formula and the pictures were becoming less and less satisfying. Also, it was around this time that I decided to confront my struggles with the conflicted feelings I had about my ethnicity. To deal with this ambivalence, I decided to experiment with the idea of incorporating Japanese imagery into the abstract compositions, which by now had become a key part of my Canadian identity. I turned to the Japanese woodblock prints, which I first discovered in art school and had admired ever since. It quickly became apparent that I had found the direction I was looking for. This new period began with paintings that were troubled, angry, and disjointed. As I carried on, they gradually became more settled and harmonious. My work in the last couple of years is more about feelings of acceptance and balance, rather than anger and division. By confronting my denials and anxieties as honestly as I could, I seem to have come to terms with who I am. The artwork is now about celebrating my cultural identity and feeling comfortable with my heritage. But it's also about not forgetting the injustice that was committed against the Japanese Canadians. Because that's never far from my mind, references to the internment will still surface from time to time. People often ask me where my ideas come from. My answer is always the same. My ideas come from my own work. Each piece I work on triggers an idea for the next one. This is why I usually end up producing a series on a particular idea, because a single painting or drawing will not tell the full story. Each new canvas becomes another chance to take another risk and hopefully discover something new, no matter how small. It all adds up. When I begin a new painting, I deliberately create an unbalanced, almost chaotic composition and then search for ways to bring order and balance to the picture. I take this approach because it forces me into a situation where there is no predictable solution and a new one has to be found. It can be a real struggle, and sometimes there just doesn't seem to be an answer. It's just a matter of sticking with it or setting the work aside and starting another one, then going back to the other one later on. I sometimes have 3 on the go. In any case, the problem will eventually be resolved. I enjoy these challenges and have found that this approach often results in unusual and satisfying paintings. I try to get into the studio every morning around 9 o'clock and get to work. The number of hours I spend in there depends on what other obligations I might have. The important thing is some artwork gets done. This exhibition, New Beginnings, is work I produced in 2018 and 2019. The title refers to a new direction I've taken in my exploration of the Japanese Canadian theme, but it also refers to how my parents' generation rebuilt their lives after the internment. This uplifting spirit is what I'm depicting in my work. A new component, the equilateral triangle, has been incorporated into the compositions. This device was a calculated choice, not only because of its appealing proportions, but also because it seemed an appropriate symbol to represent tolerance and equality, which was tragically absent in the history of the Japanese Canadians and which sadly continues to be much needed today. Other recent developments are a brighter palette and a tighter integration of all the components, further illustrating my acknowledgement and acceptance of my dual heritage and of having learned to embrace the beauty and the blending of two cultures, of being Japanese Canadian.